When we trace the trajectories of nations today, we see Africa advancing on multiple fronts, while countries traditionally labeled as first world stumble under old certainties. The continent's economy, in spite of global headwinds, is showing real momentum. According to the latest outlook by the African Development Bank, Africa's average real GDP is expected to rise from around 3.2% in 2024 to around 3.9% in 2025 and reach near 4% in 2026. That is evidence of resilience and shifting capacity. In countries such as Ethiopia and Kenya, investments in major infrastructure, including rail links, power plants, and energy grids, are tangible interventions. Burkina Faso has recently moved beyond raw resource extraction by inaugurating new domestic processing facilities for minerals and manufacturing, showing a shift from being resource donor to value creator. Simultaneously, African governments are reforming education systems, with the African Union and UNESCO placing equity at the heart of education policy. Nations are building a skilled population prepared to innovate and lead. Civic engagement is reviving. Youth led movements in North Africa, for instance, are demanding accountability in governance, in healthcare and education, signaling that citizens see themselves as actors, not bystanders in their countries. In many parts of Africa, the alignment of purpose, investment, and citizen participation is creating momentum that did not exist about a decade ago. In many Western countries, the story is different. Governance is increasingly hampered by deep structural and social divisions. In the United States and France, governance often appears paralyzed by ideological conflict rather than propelled by problem solving. Economic indicators reflect stagnation. Inflation remains elevated, growth is weak, and unemployment continues to weigh on large segments of the population. Scandals in public institutions are shaking trust in systems that were once considered bulwarks of reliability. Education systems that were once a global benchmark now show troubling trends with declining performance, with teacher shortages, and persistent inequities in learning. Social unrest has grown increasingly frequent in Europe and North America, where protests over inequality, public services, and political direction are no longer outliers. Healthcare systems that once symbolized advanced welfare are under stress, exposed by the pandemic and by long ignored infrastructure deficits. Young people in these societies express frustration, disconnection, and a loss of faith in leadership that seems more preoccupied with survival than vision. The result is a society where institutional coherence falters, communities feel fragmented, and long term strategic investment gives way to short term reaction. Africa's recent successes rest on collaboration, strategic planning, and a reassertion of sovereignty over resources and decision making. Regional integration efforts through the African Union and targeted programs, expanding educational rights for educational access for girls and children with disabilities, broaden the talent pool and innovation capacity. Agriculture is being modernized, equipment is distributed to farmers, irrigation has been expanded, communities begin to feed themselves and generate export surplus rather than depend solely on imports. Youth engagement is not simply tolerated, but it's encouraged. Civic movements show that governance is increasingly subject to citizen standards and expectations. Governments are moving deliberately to reduce dependency on external validation, leveraging internal talent, natural resources, and infrastructure to build economies rooted in self reliance. These are not ephemeral trends. They are sustained interventions generating measurable outcomes, from improved GDP forecasts to new industrial capacity. In contrast, Western nations' emphasis on individualism, ideological signaling, and fragmented communities is undermining their capacity to lead. Social cohesion suffers when institutions are trusted less, when communities turn inward, And when governments become more focused on immediate survival than long term direction, economies falter under stagnation, crisis recovery drags, and inequality widens. Education, instead of preparing new generations for complexity and innovation, struggles because there are teacher shortages, there's poor performance, and outdated systems. Healthcare and infrastructure deficits amplify public anxiety and highlight that advanced membership in the first world no longer guarantees insulation from profound structural challenges. When governments are consumed by internal divisions and short term fixes, vision and capacity erode. And the result is not just slow growth, it is societal drift. Meanwhile, across Africa, emerging economies are consolidating gains. They're building industry and educating citizens and fostering unity in ways that Western countries seem unable to replicate, indicating the global balance is quietly shifting. Africa's rise is neither accidental nor hypothetical, it's deliberate, informed by history and anchored in strategic investment. The continent has long operated on foundations of excellence in trade, culture, governance, and innovation. Today, those foundations are being modernized and scaled. Western nations, once definitive in global leadership, now show visible cracks in governance, in education systems, and social cohesion. The pattern is clear: unity, strategic investment in people and industry produce growth and resilience. Fragmentation, ideological short termism, and institutional neglect produce decline. First world countries are showing the weight of their own internal divisions. Africa is quietly turning the page with confidence, clarity of purpose, and determination. The future is now being written, and in many places across Africa, a new chapter is already underway.